Hi, welcome to Jot Notes, a show where we dive into the lives of authors and learn all about their amazing books. My name is Jenna Greene. I'm a YA fantasy author of the Imagine series and the Reborn Mark series. Joining me is our producer and co-host, Miranda O, a contemporary chick lit author of the Chin Up, Tits Out series. And Miranda has the privilege and honor of introducing our guest for today. Hi, Miranda.
Hi. I am thrilled to be here today, as always. But our guest is, another chickie that is cut from the same cloth as Jenna and I. So we have Nicole Fanning with us today. She is a smitten wife and a super proud dog mom of 3 rambunctious rescue dogs. I'm having really strong heartstrings pull on rescue dogs right now. I think it must be the spring. But anyways, we're going to get into that. She is an old school romantic with a little bit of mischief in her. And I love that. And also an obsession with Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Now, Nicole is an author of The Heart of the Inferno Series. Get marbles in my mouth every now and then, which follows a story of a dangerous mafia don and a girl who became his only exception. So I'm super excited to introduce our guest today. Hi, Nicole. How are you?
I'm good, ladies. How are you? Thank you so much for having me.
We are thrilled to have you. And like I said, you are definitely a woman cut from the same cloth as Jenna and I. And that's why we absolutely love hosting you when you come speak to us. And I love hearing about your rescue puppies. Like I said, I think it's a spring. Like anytime I see something on social media or I see a puppy on the street, I'm like, oh, can we get one? Can we get another one? And then my husband's just like, no, we have enough on the go right now. So we're gonna dive into your rescue journey, and not one, but 3 of them. How did that come to?
So I'd like to start by saying that we never planned for 3, but we ended up getting 3. But no, I had a dog. He was a little Pomeranian. His name was Chewbacca. And my husband, we were together when he was getting his car worked on, and we stumbled into the Humane Society that was right next door while we were waiting for the car to get done. And that was the worst decision he possibly could have done, because there was no way that we were walking out without taking a dog home. So then I had a dog and he had a dog. But unfortunately mine ended up getting cancer at just 5 years old. And so I was completely broken, because that was my fur baby. And, he went everywhere with me. And so my husband and my best friend kind of teamed up to find me a replacement dog, because they realized she's really depressed. We're so used to bubbly, happy Nicole, and she is not that. So they found this cute little Pomeranian Chihuahua, who is named Loki, and they got him for me. And it just kind of worked out that I was working a lot, and then obviously still grieving, because I think it was 2 months after my dog had passed away. And my husband was working from home. So the dog ended up bonding with my husband. So then my husband had 2 dogs, and I had no dog. And so I was still depressed. But I was like, it's fine. We'll work on our relationship. It's good. I'm approaching it, it's okay. I'm never going to give a dog back. Once you're mine, forever. And we had kind of moved into we bought my grandparents' house and we were refurbishing it. And I found all of this old paperwork they had from when they used to own American Eskimos. They had for 20 years. Little white, fluffy, basically imagine a Pomeranian that was bigger, and all white and fluffy, but not as big as a Samoyed. So they had, 4 or 5 of them over a 20-year period. And probably was longer than that, actually. But they had a bunch of them. And I was like, well, they must have been getting them from somewhere nearby, because you would have to have a breeder for those. So I just was kind of like, well, I'll just see if there's someone around. And sure enough, there was a breeder. And we ended up reaching out to this guy. And I remember I sent him my resume, a 3-page letter, all of my history raising dogs, this gigantic thing of I'm the right person for this dog. And he literally was like, yeah, I'm just trying to get rid of him. I don't want him. And I tell you, like, I was still brokenhearted over my dog who had passed, and I was wearing his dog tag as a necklace. And when I went to get this dog, I picked him up and I held him for the first time. And I brought my best friend with me just in case, like, there was no dog and I was about to get my kidneys harvested in like a Kroger parking lot.
Good job, backup plan.
Right. I was like, I'm trying not to die or, you know, get abducted and sent off somewhere. So I brought her with me and I pick him up. And the first thing this dog does is lick the dog tag on my neck. And like, she burst into tears. I burst into tears. Like, you could not have pried this dog from my cold, dead fingers at this point. And I tell you what, he was only like 10 weeks old and he knew that I needed him. Like, he became like my Velcro dog. And like, he's literally sitting at my feet right now. He goes everywhere with me. Like, we are inseparable. So yeah, we didn't plan for 3, but we have 3 and they're all characters in themselves. And yeah, so the Chihuahua rules the roost. So of course he does.
The littlest one typically does, right?
For sure. Yeah. They're feisty. I've never owned a Chihuahua, but like they are a whole different like bag altogether.
They are definitely. My aunt has a Chihuahua pug rescue. And Mia is a character, a very much character. She'll like love you and sit on you, but like you can't really touch her. Like, she wants to touch you, but you can't touch her.
Yes, that's actually my Chihuahua as well. Like, he wants to cuddle, but if you pet him, he might bite you. But not like hard, but he might. Yeah. So yeah, but again, like, he's mine. He's my little psycho, and he's not going anywhere. So
that's okay. We have a family dog. We've always had dogs growing up, and my parents, after my brother and I moved out of the house, we had 2 boxers at the time. And after both of them had passed, my mom was like, no, we don't want any more dogs. You know, it is what it is. And then one day, like 3 years later, this was maybe like 5, 6, 7 years, I don't even know, handful of years ago, I get a video call. So I'm like, oh, okay, mom and dad are videoing me. No big deal. Not out of the ordinary. And so I swipe it open and there's this like little puppy boxer face in the screen. I was like, oh, that's cute. Like, where are you? Who are you visiting? And then they're like, meet your sister. I was like, oh, and they named her Madison, and Madison was meant to be my brother's name if my brother came out a girl. So they were really reliving some
they still got to use it.
Yeah. So like, we wanted to use it. I'm like, oh my gosh. But now we call her the family therapy dog. So it's like whenever somebody's going through a tough time, then she just kind of goes to their place and lives there and stays there until that tough time is over. Like, I was living downtown prior to getting a partner and a kid. I was single, living downtown and Airbnb in my house. And my parents were like, here's a dog. The boxer looks scary, even though she's afraid of leaves. Just keep dog. And I'm like, that's fine. We would go running downtown and nobody would come near us. It was great because she looked scary. But anyways, dogs are near and dear to my heart, and they know, like, they know when you need them. So I'm glad that you...
I cannot tell you how much I needed my Benji, my American Eskimo. Like, I just, at that point I had gotten my Pomeranian when my husband and I weren't together. So I had this idea in my head of like, well, maybe he and I had this really deep bond because it was just the 2 of us. And like, now that my husband's in the picture, like, you know, I'm never going to have that bond again. And so like, that was like part of what was like breaking my heart, was that I was just, you know, I was always going to share a dog. And, you know, with him working from home, like, it was always going to be a disadvantage to me. Like, of course they're going to love him more than me because he's always home. But like, again, this puppy was 10 weeks old. And I remember like the other 2 were house trained and they could sleep in the bed with us. And the puppy, like, we had him in a cage in the other room. Well, like, when we shut the door to that other room, like, you would have thought someone was ripping this dog's legs off. Like, he just like just crying. So I'm like, okay. Maybe he just doesn't want to be separated. So I pick him up and I bring him in the bedroom and he's crying, but like not the same. Like, he knows he's in the room with us, but he's like whimpering. So then I pick him up and I put him just on the floor next to my side of the bed. right to sleep. Like,
Oh.
yeah. And he was like a certified like therapy dog, not like not a service dog, but a therapy dog.
Yep.
And I could bring him to work with me every day when we were working in the office, and like everybody at work loved him, and like he didn't need a lead. He would just lay in my like cube with me. The owner of the company was obsessed with him. So he would always like go in there. If I couldn't find him, it was because like my office was right outside his. And so he would just be sneaking in there and getting snacks all day. But you know, he literally just got me through some really tough emotional stuff. So you're absolutely right. They don't totally know who needs them the most. And yeah, he totally saved me. So for sure.
Good. That makes me happy. It makes my heart happy. Now I want to go into a little bit of different types of love. So you describe yourself as an old school romantic. So can we elaborate a little bit on that?
Yes. So I love like the old stories, like the wooing, the courting, the big elaborate displays of affection. And then just obviously like the chivalry aspect of it too, you know, like where he knows, I guess the best way to describe it is like in the third book that I'm writing now, you know, Jaxon being this mafia don who's like ornery and feisty, and Natalie being, you know, kind-hearted. She's a nurse. Like her job is to care for people. They're complete opposites in that regard. And so she kind of says to Jaxon, you know, like we're yin and yang, or yin yang, like we're opposites of the same coin. And he's like, well, what do you mean? And she says like, you know, you are the anger that I can't express, and I am the mercy that you can't concede. So to me, it's kind of like this idea that, you know, you don't need someone else to complete you, but together you become this like bigger unit. So it's like your heart just expands, your person just expands. It's not that you need a person to be successful or have a good life or anything like that, but adding the right person who brings out the best in you and the parts of you that like maybe, you know, you're not meant to be good at those things. So this person is good at them. It's just kind of that combination where like the Grinch, your heart grows 3 sizes and it expands, and so does your world. So, but I always love the old school love stories, you know, and just the big meetings and, you know, the convoluted characters that, you know, end up not becoming like a blob character, but growing in the process.
I love that. And I absolutely resonate with just that statement. I've been on a lot of podcasts and talked a lot about relationships, and I always say like you have to be a good you in order to be a great us. Absolutely. And that's totally true. And those old school romantic stories definitely include that chapter where there's, you know, the breakdown of marriage and divorce. Nowadays it's because somehow we miscommunicated that a partner completes you versus you complete yourself. A partner just adds value to your life, significant value to your life, but you are okay just by yourself.
Right. And I don't know, my dad, when I was a kid, like he gave me this analogy of like runners, like when you're running a marathon, like you're running at your pace, and you know, you could be running and then like maybe you have a partner for a little while, but then they want to go faster or they want to go slower. And then that's not your running buddy anymore. But like you should marry someone who's kind of like running with you at your pace. You know, like you kind of look over and you see that they're still there. And I'm probably butchering this analogy that he gave. It was so beautiful when he said it, and I'm not doing a good job.
Your dad's gonna start typing.
Right. He's gonna be on here and just like, that's not what I said. Nice try. But no, it's like you said, you shouldn't need someone to have a complete full life, but the whole idea of having a partner is like there's someone that's helping you and you're helping them in return. Like instead of like each of you giving 50-50, like you should each be giving 100 and 100, because if like your partner loses their job or they have a loss in the family or they, you know, are in a car accident and they're going through a rough therapy or whatever afterwards, like one of you may have to carry the baton for a while. And if you're only giving, you know, 50%, then it's not, you know, if their 50% is down, then you're down 50% as a couple. Yeah. So, you know, like sometimes you do carry each other. And, you know, that's, to me, that's like the definition of love is like, is this person not only going to love me at my best, but also at my worst? Like, can I count and rely on them to have my back the way I would have theirs?
Mm-hmm. Totally.
Nobody gets not nobody. Lots of people don't get me and my husband because we are polar opposites.
That's
like,
me and mine too.
That was in our wedding vows. Like, you are my complete opposite, but my perfect match. I'm an extrovert. He's an introvert. I like language. He likes math. But we suit each other so well. But we didn't get together till we were like we didn't get married till we were 30. So like and we do fine on our own.
Yep.
I go to my job, which is totally different than the job he goes to. But when we get together, it's also just like, a moment, someone that I can talk to, someone that gets me, someone that will listen to me. And for a moment, we can work on stuff together because it's tiring at the end of the day. I can make supper, but I'm tired, right? And you have someone there, you know, and if he's gone, it kind of sucks, but I survive. It's fine. I'm an adult.
Yeah, exactly. I like my alone time as much as I like my one-on-one with you time.
Yeah, he watches weird shows. You annoy me. I'm gonna go to the other TV.
Yeah,
right.
No, we're total opposites as well. Like he's the extrovert and I'm the introvert. Like I can be extroverted, but then I'll be in a situation where it's like, yeah, life of the party, we're having a great time, and then I go home and I'm like, okay, I need to not see people for like 3 days. I'm done. My people meter's been maxed. I'm set. Meanwhile, like he could just go and go and go, and you know, it'd be a blast. And I like the polar opposite aspect. Like the only time it's difficult is when we're choosing music in the car, because we have complete opposite personalities on that as well. So I have like my playlist that I listen to, and then I kid you not, I have playlists that are like husband acceptable, and like that's what it's written as in my phone. Like when we're in the car together for a long period of time, like there's songs that I know we like together that we can listen to, or we switch back and forth. But having that person that is different than you in some things, like it kind of just expands your worldview, because if you were just with someone that's just like you all the time, you wouldn't like see, or maybe not, I want to say like, you know, this is concrete, but you might not see as much of the world, or, you know, see it through that perspective than you get when you have someone that is the complete opposite of you. So
totally,
I think that's really beautiful. And that's,
the core is our values are the same.
Yes.
The morals, values, the direction. We both
are very connected to our families. Both of us are very close to our families, and we believe in honesty, and we believe in education. So as long as your values are the same, I think if those were different, then things might go awry.
You have to have some things that you do connect on, like, because that's, you know, where attraction is formed and everything too. And, you know, you can't want to murder him all the time. Like
sometimes it's okay.
Sometimes it's okay.
It's okay a little bit of the time.
We have a running joke in our family that when my husband and I met each other, there was obviously a very big, strong mutual attraction, but you know, decisions led us to choosing to have a baby, like planning and choosing to have a baby very early on in our relationship. And so we had this running joke. It was just like, hi, my name is Miranda. Would you like to have babies with me? And he goes, hi, my name is Eric. I would love to have babies with you. Like, it's the weirdest joke, but I'm like, you know what? We had the conversations. We had the connection. Our values were the same. Like we sat down with pots of tea and asked each other really deep, meaningful questions, thanks to Google. You know, like what were those questions? We Googled it and sat and had long conversations, realized that we are very different people, and we do agree to disagree on certain things.
Yep.
But then we also are like, okay, let's focus on the right here, right now, but at the same time, plan for the future. So I liken it to like, it is that old school romance that, you know, okay, you kind of just meet somebody and then choose on all levels after a few conversations to pursue a life together. Yep. Versus I need to date for a year before I need to do this. We need to live together for a year before we move to the next step. Versus just, you know, go with whatever makes you feel comfortable.
Right. When you know, you know. And and I think that's something that, you know, like not to go on a tangent about dating in 2022, but you know, I have friends that are single and it's a nightmare, like from what I hear with them. And I think part of that is that like they're not my friends in particular, but people aren't having those conversations about like, you know, politics, morality, religion, like future goals. You know, how do you spend money? You know, what's your debt look like? Like those hard conversations, it's like you're so excited to like get that first date that you're like, okay, well, I don't want to blow it. So then it's like, you know, 8 or 10,
You're selling
like,
yourself.
right, exactly. So it's like 8 or 10 dates down the line, and you're like, all right, well, you know, maybe I should tell him about all the skeletons in my closet, you know, and maybe we should get there at some point, or maybe not. But yeah, no, I think having those conversations up front really does allow you to have that honesty with each other. And, you know, when you know. So the book that I wrote, the story, you know, they're in a serious relationship after like 6 or 7 months, but it's because like they know that it's the right relationship and they've had those conversations and they've been through those situations together. So I don't think that there's, like you said, like a form, like, okay, we have to be together we have to date for a year. We have to, you know, wake up in the morning and put all my makeup on before he wakes up and brush my teeth. So he thinks I look like this and I just woke up like this always. And then we can live together. And then, you know, when you know, when you have that connection with someone and you have that honesty, it's beautiful, and life is short. So
how though did those two characters, so you say you have Natalie Tyler, and you said she's a nurse, and then you have Jaxon Pace, and he's a mafia don. How did that happen?
So he obviously, like, he can't be a mafia don just like, hey, that's my resume, this is my job title, you know, have a storefront with that on it. You know, he's a 5th generational mafia don. So he comes from this long family. There's a lot of lore, a lot of history there, and a lot of traditions in the mafia too, because I'm a dork and I love to write all that stuff. But he is a billionaire on his own because he owns a line of hotels. So he has these like luxury hotels, and she happens to be in Chicago, staying at one of these hotels for her cousin's wedding. And she is like trying to get into the parking garage, and she had rented a car, and she ends up getting into like the executive garage instead of the regular parking garage. And so she's stuck there and she's just frustrated. She's like, all right, well, I'm just going to park and I'll get it settled later. And as she's walking out of her car, she sees this little girl about to get kidnapped. And so she steps in and she stops it, like in true, just like, I have no idea what I'm doing, but I know I need to do something kind of way. And that ends up being Jaxon's daughter. And he is, yes, he's a widower. His, you know, the mother of his child passed away. And they meet, and Jaxon is just immediately, because of his personality and what he does, he's so suspicious of her. Because he comes from this world of, you know, give and take. Like, you don't do something without expecting something in return. And so he's like, is she a cop? Is she from another family? Is she, you know, just trying to get close to me? Like, what's the situation? And she just is baffled by this person who's like, no, I just did this because it was the right thing to do. And so they meet, and like, he's kind of a jerk, and, you know, like, he's stunningly handsome, but he's still a jerk. And so it just kind of all unfolds from there. But she is there for this wedding, and her ex-fiance is actually the best man in the wedding. And he is the ex-fiance because he cheated on her with, you know, a lot of people. Yeah. And because they had kind of grown up, like, he's her cousin's best friend. And because of that relationship, she didn't tell her family what happened. She just ended the relationship and moved away. So she had this really close-knit, large family that was all very interconnected with lots of cousins. And, you know, she finds out he's cheating 3 weeks before the wedding, and then she's like, nope, we're done. And she bails, but her family doesn't understand. And so her family the whole time is trying to get her back together with Colton. And they're looking at her like she's this horrible person for hurting Colton, who's, you know, very charming. And, you know, he's the storyteller guy, typical skis. But that's who he is. And so they're trying to get her back together with him. And meanwhile, Jaxon comes into the picture and is like, yeah, no, she's mine. We're done here. Cause he's just so fascinated by her. And, yeah, so like, that's like the old school romance thing to it, because I saw with a lot of mafia romance in particular, it feels like it's the same, like 2 or 3 concepts that are running. It either feels like they're from like, these are the same plot lines that I've seen over and over and over. Is like, either they're from 2 separate mafia families and their marriage has to happen because they, you know, have to solve some problem, but they hate each other and then they end up falling in love with each other. Or, she saw something she shouldn't, or she was kidnapped, or, like in 365 days, he just thought she was pretty and kidnapped her, and she falls in love with him via Stockholm syndrome. And I was like, okay, well, like there's a lot of potential here, but then there's the whole consent aspect that seems to be missing. And I'm like, okay, well, if I don't see the story I want to read, like I'm going to write it. So that was kind of my idea, where like they were never supposed to meet. They were certainly never supposed to fall in love. They are two complete opposites, but they're two broken people for different reasons. And they end up filling in those cracks for each other, kind of like what we talked about. And so things that like she ends up eventually telling her family what happened by the end of the story. And that's like a huge, like I cry every time I read it, and like I wrote it, like I know it's coming, but it's because like she even says it too, like it's not that Jaxon is the reason, it's like Jaxon is the catalyst. Jaxon is the reason that motivated her to remember her own strength and find that.
Right.
Aww.
I like that.
Is it challenging to combine romance with intrigue, with adventure, or is it an easy juggle?
It's definitely challenging. It would have been easier for me just to like pick mafia romance and go with that. But again, like I read a lot of like mystery, suspense, thriller stuff. Like I'm a Stephen King fan, a James Patterson. Like I like a lot of where there's an actual plot happening in the background too. So when I decided to write the 4 books that are going to be in this series, I mapped out the entire plot start to finish. And then I mapped out like all the things that were going to happen in between and all the interconnected things from there. And then I had a little scattering of little novellas that will be different characters we've met in these 4 books. It'll be like their story, because I wrote like 122 pages of character backstory for all of these characters. I don't sleep very well. But so I wanted to interweave it where if you were someone who liked the thriller aspect, or, you're a guy and you're like, okay, this is the mafia thriller, I want to read it for that reason. You would enjoy this book as much as someone who's enjoying it for the romance side of it too. So because Jaxon and Natalie are 2 completely opposite characters, I thought it would be really interesting to split the perspective. So it's first person, but like it alternates every other chapter. So chapter 2 is Jaxon, chapter 3 is Natalie, chapter 4 is Jaxon. So like the even number chapters are Jaxon, the odd number chapters are Natalie, and it moves the story, but also gives people those different aspects to it. So I hope that I've created an equally interesting thriller as much as an equally romantic, romance as well.
I like that. I also like when books go different chapters, different characters. It breaks up the pace. It breaks up it breaks up the pace of the book for sure. But then it also kind of like you take one hat off and put another hat on, and you get a different perspective. It's the same story, just told through different eyes. And I'm sorry, I'm going on a tangent here, but did you find it difficult or very flowy is not the right word, but I'm going to go with flowy when you were writing that? Because I'm writing a book very similar to that every chapter is a different character, and I flip through 3 different characters in my book. And for me, the way that that people were telling different stories, it's not a couple. I find it difficult to like take that hat off of one person and then put my hat on my next character. So how is it for you writing that?
I would say it's pretty good. So I have ADD, so it works for me. What I did when I wrote the full plot is I have like a master spine, and then I have what I call like the book skeletons. So each book, because we're alternating every other chapter, I've written out like what's the main event that happens in that chapter. So like it's a clear direction of where it's going, but we can allow the characters to have a little bit of leeway based on like what their personalities are and kind of do that. So I would alternate. I would write, chapters 1 through 7, flip-flopping back and forth, no problem. But then like I might be driving in my car and I might be seeing a scene that's in chapter 12. And because I have that outline, like I know I can go home and I can go write chapter 12 and, just be able to fit it in where it's supposed to go. But what I found was that, kind of what you were talking about. Sometimes when you have that like Jaxon hat on, I would write like 2 or 3 chapters as him because I was in that zone. I was in like, I'm a mafia don and I'm badass and I'm pretty cool. And and then I, would be all in my feels and I'd be romantic and like whimsical. Like, not that Natalie is, like, she's more of a badass than that. But, I would alternate like writing several of her chapters as well. So sometimes I'll jump around, but I will also like write a couple like little couplets of chapters at a time when it makes it, when I'm in the mood. Because you're right, they are complete opposite. And that was something I wanted to keep. Even though like we're seeing this couple come together and become a unit, the one thing I hate with romance books, and I'm sure you both agree with me, is when the couple becomes like a blob person. And I think Himyan or How I Met Your Mother did a really good job of talking about that. Like when they just become like one and they're just, there's no different character there. So even though like Jaxon does change and Natalie does change, like they get those additions from each other, they will still always be their own characters.
Individual. Yeah. And I like that. For me, what I do if I'm in the zone, I'll totally just write like that same character. I'll just write, if I'm done the chapter, I'll skip until their next chapter. I'm like, I'm not ready to take this hat off. I'm just gonna go with the flow.
Yep. No, I have found it difficult sometimes that I can't get into it. Like, especially because, Jaxon has like a dangerous job. So a lot of what he does is like action scenes. Like there's a lot of gunfights and him being, again, he's a complete opposite personality of Natalie. So it would be really difficult for me to take off that hat and his way of speaking and his unique style and then, become Natalie. So that was always tough for me too. And honestly, like me as a person, I do relate more to Jaxon than I do to Natalie. So like, and I've had interviewers ask me that, like, are you Natalie? And I'm like, no, Natalie is a way better person than I am.
She's way more eloquent put together.
What's that?
So she's way more eloquent and put together.
Yes. And she's a really cool character because like I would describe her as like, she's quiet, but she's not weak. Again, like she's someone that saw this happening, like this kidnapping about to happen, and she jumped in to do something about it. And that like act first, think later kind of person is exactly who Jaxon is. So that's one of the things that they do connect on, even though their approaches are usually different. But she ends up, in the second book, they actually get married and she ends up he is what's known as the Don Supreme. So in Chicago, there's multiple mafia families and the top families are the Dons, but there is one Don who's like the final vote. Like they all pay tribute to him. That's the Don Supreme. And that's what Jaxon's family has held because they're the most powerful mafia for several generations. But the Don Supreme, when he gets married, they gain a Regina or a queen. So she ends up becoming this.
I'm learning so much.
Thank you. So she ends up becoming the Regina Vestra, which is Latin for Queen of Hearts. And it's something that is really indicative of like the men end up falling in love with her too. And so there's like a really beautiful scene where Jaxon catches all of the men like guarding over her while she's like having a private moment, grieving someone and what's happening in the scene. And all of the men are just like standing off in the distance, like protecting her. And he kind of realizes like, they're not protecting her because I told them to, or because I pay them, or because they're scared of me. They're protecting her because they love her. And so like, she becomes like the Queen of Hearts where like, he's like, my men are more loyal to you than they are to me. Like, what's going on? But she's not weak. I promise. She's awesome. Again, she's who I want to be, but I'm not. So
we can strive to be. I want to pick this book up, which is actually, where can we pick this book up?
So it's available on Amazon in paperback form, hardback coming soon. And it's also available on Kindle. And if you are a Kindle Unlimited subscriber, it's free. So both 1 and 2 are available now on both. So
which one is book 1 and which one is book 2?
So Catalyst is book 1. And actually, I want to show you guys because I just had the covers redone. So like they have covers. So this one is Catalyst. And then Ignite is actually like, she's thicker. She's a big, thick girl. I think she's like
thick.
near 600 pages. So then
we
this
got
one is Ignite.
6 eyes in that thick.
Yeah, she's thick. But yeah, so they are available on Amazon and Kindle for now. So
Okay.
and then book 3 is coming out this summer. So I'm almost finished with it now. So
that's exciting. That's very exciting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being on our show. We covered a lot of topics in just a short amount of time.
We totally did.
I'm really proud of us. And I didn't know anything about mafia queens, so that's pretty cool.
I feel like I want to be a mafia queen in my next life.
Yes, you definitely do. I promise. Yeah. You definitely do.
Yeah.
Okay, goal set. Awesome.
Thank
Got
you so
that
much
planned
for having
out.
me, ladies. This has been so much fun.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just before we wrap up, we want to send a big shout out to our show sponsors. So thank you to Creative Edge Publicity with Mickey Mickelson and the Writers Corner Network. And of course, the biggest thank you to all our viewers and all our listeners. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.